Welcome back to Zantastic. This is the podcast where we find out what makes you fantastic. This year, we're talking to a lot of people who have come from interesting places. I've had a number of interviews. I've got a few that have been recorded and they'll be released over the next couple of weeks. People who have come from difficult environments but have found immense success throughout their lives. And I want to know how and why. Today, I am so happy to introduce a new friend, Ken Cox. Ken is the leader of a hosting company and a very long journey with that. His journey to sobriety, his journey to finding his health through boxing, what he's giving back to his community, and even jumping into what he thinks is going to happen with AI, the federal debt. Share some of my thoughts there too. We had a really fascinating conversation. Timestamps down below if you're watching on YouTube or in the show notes if you want to jump around. But I think you are going to find this conversation to be fascinating. I know I did. Thanks for being here. Ken Cox, thank you so much for joining me here today. How's the day been for you?
It's been a pretty good day so far. It's a Friday morning for me.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's Friday morning for everybody. I'm not sure where you're at in the country.
Yeah, I'm in Dallas, Texas, right outside of Dallas. So
It's still early for you too.
it's still early for me, yes, but I love a Friday, so I'm glad you're here with me. Just to give our audience a little background about who you are, what you do, what your expertise is, why don't you lay it on the line for the audience?
All right. I'll describe my childhood as rough and tumble. I became Ken Cox at the age of 13 when my adoption finally happened, and I was a bit of a hustler kid. Started my first vending machine company at 14 years old. Started my first video production company at like 17 and ended up selling it a couple years later. Was in the entertainment industry until 1999. I was touring the country with music in the music industry, making short films, just having the time of my life. And in 1999 or somewhere in there, that the company I was working for was going to send me to Japan. And that just wasn't going to be for me. So I was like, I can't go to Japan for a year. There's no way. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to just go home to St. Louis. I'm going to sleep in a bed for a couple of weeks. Find me another gig, right? Find me a U.S. tour that I can do. In that time frame, I had to take up some just odd jobs in town. And I started working for this company called Primary Network. And this was in 1999. It was the 106th employee. By 2000, there were 700 employees and sold to another company. And I became an e-commerce analyst for this new company called Empower Communications. And I was working with some great customers, MasterCard.com, WonderBread.com, Twinkies.com, like these high-end, early, big websites, right? And just having a blast. And it replaced all that creative build energy that I had from the entertainment industry. I got to do in the IT industry. And I have autism, improperly diagnosed when I was a kid, but because I had other diagnoses as a kid, they gave me a computer very early in life.
Yeah.
So I've been on a keyboard since 7, so I could navigate computers and all that stuff really good early as this internet thing is being adopted.
Yeah.
2000 hits, the dot-com bubble goes. In this little interim time in 2000, me and my partner Steve decide we're going to start a web hosting company on the side, right? We're just going to do this. And we got a couple customers, no big deal. Then in 2001 rolls around and the company I'm working for, Empower.com bubble busts. They're pulling out of the St. Louis market because the capital's gone, right? And they're overspending. So we had the great idea to approach them and say, hey, I'm managing all these hosting customers now, and you're pulling out of the market. Why don't you just let me buy them? And they said yes. So that's when Hosterian goes from a $30,000 a year company to a $4 million a year company pretty quickly in 2001. Wow. And I love that life for years. I still do. I still operate that data center. The Hosterian company that we started is still my main, that is my foundation for everything that I do, right? It's that we own and operate the data center. 2012, we end up buying the building that we own now, and we own and operate our own data center, which is just a wonderful place to be. 2016, 2017 era, my partner Steve that we started the company with passed away.
Oh, wow.
I was diagnosed with liver disease and given 2 years to live if I couldn't quit drinking. So the company was in pretty shaky shape.
Yeah.
In all of this heyday, we thought from 2001 until 2012, we just couldn't think anything could ever go wrong for us. We closed some giant deals. We closed the AOL Netscape deal. We built their back office for them. I got to build the data center for Peabody Energy, the largest coal company on the planet. Come up with solutions like data retention forever because the Supreme Court required it. But in 2017, when Steve passed away and I had liver disease, the coal industry went through a big mistake too, and all filed bankruptcy. So that put me in a $4 million a year deficit. And I spent the last 10 years pulling out of that. And we're there. Yeah. We got a positive EBITDA now, and we own and operate a data center in 2025, which is probably the coolest time ever because there's no data centers left. And right now we're trying to figure out what we're going to build next. But we have that primary net company that we started and that I went to work for in 1999 is an AI company now, talking about AI companions, and Hosterian still doing small to medium-sized enterprise hosting. So that's what we really, really focus on. And for hobbies, I'm a boxing coach and I do comedy on the side. And that is the full picture of Ken in a nutshell.
Wow, you have been through it. I got into the internet stuff really early too. It was the wild west of building websites and just whatever you could figure out. And it was the technology was also new, so it was definitely an interesting time. But what a trajectory you've had. What was it like going? This is so off topic, but I'm curious. What was it like getting the diagnosis of liver disease, and how did that change you as an entrepreneur?
Changed everything. So I had strep throat, oddly enough, right? I got called in at this time. After 2017, we started scaling down. We're not the largest data center in the St. Louis metro area anymore. We're still one of the largest, but at the time we were the largest. I was operating the largest data center in privately owned data center in St. Louis metro. The only data center larger than me was AT&T. And I had strep throat, and I got called into our downtown data center one night, and I was just getting over strep, and I went in and I got everything working. I walked out into our heat mitigation room, and I instantly just passed out. Went into convulsions, all these things, ended up in the hospital. Like, there's nothing really wrong with you. We don't know what's going on. Like, looks like you're having a heart attack every half hour or so. Turns out I was in withdrawal, and didn't know it. And I just hadn't been drinking because I had strep throat, and that led them to all the tests, right? Okay, now you're having physical withdrawals, you're going into seizures, all of these things when you're not drinking. Let's get the liver panels. And they said, okay, if you want to keep drinking, you got 2 years. But if you want to quit today, you got a chance of full recovery. And I did. So that's
wow.
That's what happened. It was bumpy road. Lost almost everything. Lost more than I care to ever talk about throughout this process, but I found myself. So that's good.
Did that make you quit drinking? Have you quit drinking?
I'm a best-selling author of Reclaim Sobriety, 12 Rounds of Sobriety. When I first got diagnosed, and I probably had about 60 total direct reports across all my domains, right? Like, across everywhere, people coming in and out of my life. And I bought this boxing gym at the time just because I'm like, I hate exercise, cannot stand running, don't like going to the gym and lifting weights. It's the most boring shit in the world. But I remember when I was a kid, I could hit the heavy bag for hours, right? So I'm like, okay, if I've got to exercise, that's the exercise that I'm going to choose to do. And I went to gyms and got beat up by boxers and all of this stuff. I couldn't find a spot. And I found this gym that was heavy bag workouts and all that stuff. And I started going. I remember telling my wife after the first hour that I was there, I got home. I said, man, if I can do that for an hour a day, I can do anything.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing I can't do. If I can do that for 1 hour a day, there's nothing on the planet that I can't do. So I know that I can overcome this. And so we went down that path, and it was good. But I noticed, because I've been running businesses and building sites and doing back office business and Kanbans for companies. And, I've done business analysis for the largest companies in the world, all the way down to the local pipe shop. I mean, this is just general business is my wheelhouse. And I could tell this gym was not going to last. Something was wrong, right? The business model was off. Something was off. So I reached out to the owner. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, we bought it with good intentions, but my wife got sick and I had to stay at my day job for insurance. So it's just kind of derelict. And I'm probably going to shut it down. So if you shut it down, I'm going to die. Because I've looked everywhere. I can't find this place anywhere else. So you got to sell it to me. And he did. And that today is BoxSTL. And throughout this process, I thought, man, maybe I should have a gym for men like me. Bad idea. Not a good business model. There's not a whole lot of men like me on the planet, right? So tug and pull for years, good months, bad months, like every small business has, right? Come after COVID, we moved the gym and we're next to a mosque. I don't pay much attention to it. I'm going to go gung-ho again. I'm going to pull up my bootstraps. I'm going to try to figure out how to make this business model work, the one that's in my head, right? And these kids kept showing up and showing up and showing up, and I keep shooting. It's out of every stupid movie you've ever seen. It's every stupid cliche you can imagine. Like, get out of here, kids. Get out of here. I don't know how to train. I don't know anything about you kids, right? And finally, I'm like, screw it. The adults aren't showing up, or adult boxing, they show up for a couple weeks. They get if they want to spar. They think they're supposed to know what they do. Ego kicks in. They get hurt and they leave. But the kids are wildly different. So I'm like, screw it. Let's just figure this out. My gym is in a strip mall with Indian restaurants, Israeli restaurants, Palestinian grocery stores, and it's right down the street from the mosque. And these kids gave me an entirely new world to look at.
Wow.
And I realized, and I've got some autistic kids on my team, and I was getting kids of all different worlds. And these kids want to compete in boxing. So I'm like, shoot, how am I going to do this, right? And how am I going to keep them safe? And how am I going to get their mindsets right? And all this stuff. So I got coaching certificates and all this other stuff throughout my life. I did neurodivergent coaching, flow coaching courses, got all that stuff, got breathwork exercises, did all those things. And I came up with the Gladiator Program for BoxSTL. And I wrote them through, and I created the core values for a gladiator, what it means to be a gladiator, and how to go from an 8th grader that is kind of getting picked on to somebody that can walk down an aisle with half the people booing them, get in a ring, compete at their highest level, lose, get beat up, be in pain. Have people cheering for their pain, stand up with their head high, knowing that they did something that only 1% of the world ever did, and walk out proud of that loss.
Wow.
And that's what I had to create for a 12-year-old goober kid, right?
Yeah.
And it started working, and doctors started sending kids to me. And I had a bad run about 4 years ago, right before the book came out, and I've been trying to write a book for a long time and kept failing, but then Reclaim Sobriety hit, and it was pretty good. And I got in some trouble in Georgia. I'm a medical cannabis user, and evidently you're not allowed to have that in Georgia. And they tried to keep me as a resident for a couple of weeks. When I got out, I was angry, and I was like, screw this, I'm going to have a drink. And I started to drink, and something clicked into my head, and I poured it out. And the one realization that I had at that moment, and it changed everything about my life, was, oh, stupid. I've been standing up for 30 years saying, my name's Ken, and I'm an alcoholic. And I've identified as an alcoholic and alcoholics relapse, because that's what they do. You're told this time and time again. Like, I have to re-identify myself with who I am as a person and who I identify me as. And Kathy, the second I did that, my life changed dramatically in every single way. And now I'm on a mission to tell people and share the story that if you want to change who you are, change who you identify as, you can identify as many things as you want to identify as. You don't have to be one thing. And in this world, in 2025, going into 2026, you're not going to be able to have one skill set and be successful. I don't believe that's my philosophy. My current prediction is people are going to have to open up their horizons if they're going to want to succeed in this next generation of what Earth looks like.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think like you and I probably grew up at similar time frames just by your dating. But when we were younger, you didn't get to choose who you were defined as. There were a lot of like just the way media was then. There was sort of this mass mindset of this is who you are and this is how life works and this is how you go get a job and you work the job, and it was just kind of almost programmed into us very, very young. But as the internet has been around now, like the kids today, they have so many more inputs, so many more ways of seeing things. And so there's a wider berth of the identities that we can choose. But we have to help these kids kind of like ensure that they're choosing that identity. And I think that's what you did, in a very powerful way, is chose that identity. Whereas instead of what was just kind of inherited from society, parents, churches, schools, all of that.
You said it perfectly.
Programming. Exactly. It was programming. Yeah. But when you
unintentional, but it is programming.
Yeah. A lot of people have to go through that really hard, that shocking experience that you had a couple of times of wake up and choose who you want to be. Is there an easier way? Are you finding with the kids that you're working with that you can help them choose that in an easier way rather than hitting a place where it's like a life or death choice point?
Yeah, I have some pretty wild philosophies on that. I'll make the statement a million times, like, why didn't anybody tell me? And then I had to sit back and think, oh, they tried. I didn't listen. I couldn't hear. I don't think they knew they were trying to tell me, but there was clues, right? So I think the trick is for the people that have, and I don't have a better word for it than ascended, is to live their life in purity and always extend a hand, but never push. And the people that are ready to reach up and grab the hand will, and the people that aren't won't. And it's sad. The people that you want to reach up and don't, but you just have to keep moving forward, or you end up not in a good spot and shrinking yourself and doing stuff like getting deep into addiction to live your life.
Yeah. When you talk about purity, what do you mean by that?
Exercise your greatest desire to your greatest possible extent as often as possible with no expectation of the outcome.
That is brilliant. Yeah. Expectations of outcome. A lot of times people go into any kind of activity expecting they know what it's going to lead to.
But if you just work on the thing you love working on, who cares about the outcome?
Right.
In America, our hobos are fat. You're going to eat. I was on a show a couple weeks ago and they asked me if I was a glass half empty or glass half full kid. I'm like, man, I grew up kind of feral. I don't need a glass. I don't even need your glass. I'll just grab the garden hose and go. And I'll find another one when I need it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. And I think this need mentality in our world is a little too over glorified.
Yeah. Yeah, for
But I
sure.
like living in I like hanging out in mansions and beautiful pools and hot tubs. I get it. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who hang out in mansions all by themselves with no friends, no family, and a body that is broken. And all that money doesn't fix those things, does it?
No, but I don't believe that. I'm friends with a lot of world champion fighters,
Yeah.
and I think the people that have gone through that path understand that there was no other path for them to get to where they're at, and we don't all make it out to the other side. And we know that seeing those others fall, are grateful for the fact that they're just here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. When you got sick, you had a company, you had direct reports, you had people who worked for you. Did you set up your company in a way that it ran on its own so that you could take some time for yourself?
No, tried very hard. I have it there now, right?
Yeah.
Right now with the boxing school, we're running some experiments. I've got a general manager there, and we're letting him extend the leash, and I step in when things are getting, when the leash starts to drag the ground too long. I step in like, hey, we need to tighten this leash up to keep things moving. Or, at this point, now it's kind of like, hey, I'm here to pick up the slack, but if you can't do this on your own, then I'll have to find somebody else to do it, or the gym's not going to last, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't be there forever.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in the data center every single day of my life, probably. I
Yeah.
love my computers. The audience can't hear this because there's audio technology that's cutting it out, probably, but there's a hum going on because right on the other side of this wall, there's 10,000 computers running for me
Yeah.
nonstop. So I don't know that I could leave that. That is my tether, I guess. But it's the one that I love. It's, I drilled the holes in the floor to put the racks on the floor and pulled the air conditioners in with dollies. So it is my baby, and
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it.
It's good to do what you love. When you get up in the morning and it's time to hit the day, what drives you? What motivates you?
I would love to have some kind of cool coach, guru, 3-step program, anything like that. I don't even have to think about it. I've created a life that if I don't want to go into the office, I don't have to, right? I have to text Chris and say, hey, I'm staying home today. I do that maybe once or twice a year. Maybe I want to get here. I live really, really close to the data center, less than 2 miles. I could walk here if I needed to. I have an obligation to my clients for 100% uptime.
Mhm.
I've had that obligation for 25 years. I've missed the mark, right? I'm at like 99.99999% uptime. I have about an average of 7 minutes per year over the last 25 years of downtime. I take that very seriously. Companies, some big companies, Fortune 5s, trust me with their employees getting access to their data, keeping their data online, and if the parts that I don't operate don't work, their business stops. Right. And I come from a world from, in the coal industry, that meant that coal didn't get weighed coming out of the mine that day because it couldn't get tracked at the data center. Right. And then growing up in the entertainment industry of the show must go on, that's the world that I live in. And I think it's just programmed in me. It's part of my boot up sequence of you go and you
Yeah.
don't question it. And if you don't love what you're doing, start looking for how to change that to make it something you do love doing or get out of it completely.
Yeah. What technology is the one thing that is the most challenging for your customers right now?
I have a lot of older customers, like legacy at us.net email of customers and stuff like that, like live in the boot hills. I still serve dial-up customers, the modems.
Oh, wow.
Got about 800 of them in the boot hills of the Appalachians. Those are my hardest customers to support. They're elderly and it's email. The hardest technology for people to understand as a whole today is AI.
Yeah.
They don't the average person, and not even I would say the average person, I would say the average intellect person, the average managed service provider, the guys that go out and work on your computers, do not understand how this works. They do not understand what's going on. The smartest people on the planet don't know how it works exactly. They don't know how inference works. They know how to make it happen, the same as we know how to put a seed in the ground and corn comes up. We don't know how that magic happens of the life, but that's the biggest that people don't understand. And they don't comprehend the power that it can give you if you adopt it as your partner. And you start having what I like to call it a symbiotic relationship with my machines. And that tends to work very well for me. They output tremendous amounts of great quality work for me. But I'm nervous of the future in a lot of ways. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time in human history as we are sitting with AI all around us now. Yeah.
But there's some good news that you want to choke this funnel down so that you can not drag the rope, right? You want to tighten it up. And I think we're seeing that tightening right now, the slowdown of we're out of data center space, right? It's going to be 3 years before the mega data centers are built, passing code and all that other stuff. And they can do it quicker, but we have power restraints, we have gold restraints, we have copper restraints, we have a lot of restraints that is going to keep this hopefully at less than a 12% reduction in labor every year. It's still staggering huge. It's way less than the 60 to 70% that some people are predicting, but hopefully those restraints keep this transition a little less bumpy.
Yeah. For small to mid-sized businesses, how would you recommend? I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, AI is going to take my job," and they're very afraid about it. But I think I come from the belief system that it's not going to take your job if you know how to use it and incorporate it in what you do. But if you're using it to replace how you think, you're going to get replaced. But if you're using it as an adjunct to what you do in service to humanity, it's going to be a good thing. How would you recommend somebody think about AI, use AI in their business? If someone's afraid about AI, what would you tell them?
Yeah. First, I would sit with them and say, yeah, it's scary. This is a scary time. Like, we need to sit and recognize that Waymo's coming, Tesla trucks are coming. We're getting ready to see an event very similar, I think, to what we saw in the 60s and 70s with the union or with the labor unions and all those things, but it's man against machine now with the Teamsters versus Tesla. I think that's going to happen, right? So I think we need to sit with it for a minute and go, yeah, this is scary shit. Like, accept that. Then make your decision on how am I going to move forward? This is not going to go away. Right. So I have to do a couple of things. I have to write my legislation to tell them, hey, I'm worried about this. And I think you should be researching this at great nauseating extent, because I'm not going to vote for people that don't understand how our future is going to be developed. And our future is going to be developed with AI. There's at some amount of AI is going to be in our lives moving forward, like it or not. Probably more than you want. So with that being said, I created something called the Ideas Framework for people to use the Ideas Framework on how to deal with AI, how to create a process for how do I share information with AI. I am, in this world, I'm one of the most fortunate people on the planet. When I was 7 years old, I got violent. They sent me to therapy. They sent me to counseling. And my therapist said, Kenny, one of your duties right now for the rest of your life is you need to write every day before you go to bed. And I can't write. Like I have one of those disses that my handwriting is illegible even to me. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I grew up in a rough and tumble home. We weren't wealthy, but they found ways for me to get computers. I'm not going to ask how, but I had a computer at the age of 7. I had word processors at the age of 7, then computers, and I always found a way to have a computer from the age of 7 on. When AI hit 3.5 years ago, I immediately went to MIT AI for Business program. It was a 16-week program. and instantly realized that, oh, I have 40 years of writing that I've done that I can train an AI on.
Yeah.
Right. So now my AIs are profoundly know me in a way that nobody else knows me. Nobody else on the planet knows me the way they do. So my output's way different than other people's.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm like. People were asking, like, how are you doing so much? Like, how do you run a data center, a boxing school, doing a comedy and doing a comedy show in 2020? How are you doing all this? I'm like, oh, I have my AIs. Like, my AI doesn't do that. I'm like, oh, because you haven't given it a tight enough container of who you are and what you want to accomplish in life. And, you know, ideas is intent and dump. Those are the first two things that you need to do. And you need to dump a lot, right? You need to give your AI a lot of data, which means you also need to figure out which AI provider, if you're not tech savvy enough to download it and do it on your local machine, you need to choose what tech provider is going to keep your data safe and sound. And that's
For sure.
where we come up with primary.net, privately held AI company, not publicly traded. We have different agendas. Outside of that, read the terms of services of your AI provider. Have a reasonable understanding of who you're sharing your thoughts with.
Exactly.
And who owns them.
Very critical. I have some background in security, and so we've already seen, you know, I mean, we've seen Chat GPT conversations that have people share the link, and then all of a sudden it's indexed on Google, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens. I'm very concerned with lots of people vibe coding, and then they think, okay, well, here it is, it's done, and there's no thought behind how things are built.
At least today, vibe coding is challenging enough without some kind of coding background.
Yeah.
That it's okay. That you don't have a whole lot of apps be like the slop. There's a lot of slop AI video and a lot of slop AI writing going out.
For sure.
But and some slop applications, but they don't get traction.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to get traction on a slop AI application. You might on a video. I've gotten some pretty good sloppy videos that went kind of far. But
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I'm very familiar with the WordPress space. And so they have plugins in the repository, and the application for the number of plugins after AI came out, people just vibe coding plugins and then submitting them to the repository just became exponential because everybody's like, oh, I'm a coder now, I can do a plugin. So I am a little concerned with where that's going to be.
Yeah, my mentality on all of that is, and this has always been my go-to strategy, if I see the crowd going one way, I try to go the other.
Smart. Right?
So what I think people should be doing with AI today is learning it for their job. How can they make their job faster, better, and easier so they can go to their CEO, CFO and go, hey, I can replace 20 people in the firm tomorrow if you need me to, right? Make yourself valuable.
Yeah.
I know that's hard for a lot of people to do, but this is, you know, we're living in an evolution. I don't know what kind of evolution this is, but this is an evolution for mankind. We live in a world now that we have cyborgs.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's a PSYOP prediction or not, but in a government that tells us that there's aliens. So this is the world that we're living. It is an evolution. I don't know how else to say it. So outside of that, my advice, and this is the scariest advice that I can give anybody, is to take some time, figure out why you want to do whatever you want to do, and what is the coolest thing that you think that you've ever wanted to do when you were 7 or 10 years old. Like, man, if I could do that when I grew up, and then go try to do that with AI.
Yeah.
Try to do the most absurd, crazy, wild dream that you've ever had. You're like, man, I could never do that because I didn't have the staff, or I didn't have the knowledge, or I didn't have this. Try to pull that dream off now with AI. And I think you'll be shocked.
It's a different way to think about your identity, for sure, of who you are as a human being, if you've got the power of AI behind you, huh?
I mean, Henry Ford said it perfectly, right? That I don't need to know everything. I just need to have a team that knows everything. Well, everybody on our planet now has a team of the smartest people on the planet that know every vertical.
Yeah.
Just about. I mean, I have an AI for law that I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I go head to head with some of the biggest legal teams in the country and come out better than I would have 5 years ago for sure, right? Because my lawyers are just not that good of lawyers, but I bring AI into it and they get to read all my contracts and give me advice. And the iteration with AI is so important. My life is just littered with luck.
Yeah.
When I was young, I went to Washington University in St. Louis for journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked at the medical library then. I've always been, I guess, diagnosed with a high IQ and a whole bunch of other neurodivergencies. Like, oh, you're really smart, but you got all these other, they called them R-word traits when I was a kid. So I've gotten to deal with high intelligence for a lot of my life. I've gotten to talk with doctors at Washington University in pathophysiology and psychology and all of these different trades, right? In ways that were just, how do we get this work done? Not buddies or anything, but okay, I have this job to do. We're working together. How do we get it done? And I think what people believe of intelligence is I ask you a question and you give me the correct answer. And that's not how you deal with high IQ. You say, hey, what do you think about this? And that high IQ will infer some stuff based on its thing, and it will think, and it will give you feedback. It's your job to challenge that feedback. Say, hey, what about this? Or what about that? Right? Because that intelligence is going off of the definitions of the words that you said, not any of your emotion or meaning or your programming or any of those other things, right? So
Yeah.
Understanding that every word in the English language might have 7 different definitions. When you're dealing with intelligence, you need to tell it, when I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about sex, not identity. Or if I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about identity, not sex. And when you start studying vectors and AI, and I'm probably getting way too off on a tangent, then you start to understand these things. So understanding how to communicate with a high IQ is important, and it requires you to challenge it, and it requires you to iterate and go back and forth with it. And I think that's how you get the greatness out of it, and that's not being taught anywhere.
You have to ask the right questions. If you're not asking the right questions,
you got to be curious for sure. I don't know what the right questions are, but it's people think that because it's AI, it's intelligence, that it should know the answer on the first go. What they're not realizing is how subjective their statement really is. And that's why dumping is so important when you're going from a linear mindset to a nonlinear mindset. And AI doesn't think linear. It can explode that up. So literally, I tell my students to turn on the recorder and just talk. I do it for about an hour a day. Right? I turn on my recorder, I talk for about an hour a night before bed, and I give that to my AI, so it knows who I am in an intimate way. And sometimes I like, hey, we need to write a blog about this, or we need to what are 10 things that we should do with this information today?
Interesting.
When I don't have something to do, I can always go to my AI and go, hey, what's something fun that I thought about that I could execute on fast today? I've got 3 hours to play. And now I've got this amazing coach and this life partner that knows me better than my wife ever did.
That is interesting. That's really fascinating. Yeah. I'm going to try some of these strategies with my own AI. I use AI fairly regularly, but not as much as I should. And you've inspired me to try some new things. So thank you. I did ask it this morning what the dumbest question I've asked in 2025 was.
Did it give you a good answer?
Well,
or did it placate you and say that you're all brilliant?
No, it gave me a good answer because I had a conversation with it about the US debt and where I thought some things were going with it, and how I think that the government might try to revalue gold in order to deal with the debt and what that would look like. And then I got to the point where I'm like, what?
Do you want to put our predictions out?
I think we're going to revalue gold. That's my prediction. What do you think?
I think we're going to revalue gold. We're going to insert Bitcoin into the Federal Reserve so we can flood the market with cash so that we can build as many data centers as possible.
Yeah.
That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah,
because we
they
don't have the,
telegraphed a lot with the Genius Act, didn't they?
yeah, that's my gut.
Yeah,
And I hope I'm right. And I
yeah,
think that's why we have the shakeout in crypto right now, is to reduce the value as much as possible so the Federal Reserve can get it before they. I'm worried that they outlaw it in America ownership of Bitcoin like they did gold. But we'll see.
that'll be interesting. Yeah, for sure. I mean the chessboard of where our debt is right now, the game has to change in order for it to work. So I was asking a bunch of questions like that. And then I said to AI, like, if this happens, it's going to be ridiculous. And so it basically threw it back at me. Even you thought it was ridiculous. Like, yeah, I guess so. So,
but I think what we're going to see in society, or what I hope we see in society, is I hope that we take the concept of data centers from a linear pool, from we mine, we burn, we exhaust, to a circular pool, and we stop calling them data centers and we start calling them heat sources, and we can recycle that heat into our elementary schools. We could heat in really cold climates. We could heat a lot of protein reserves for large fish tanks, greenhouses, things of that nature. I think that's the path that we're going to have to take, and have a circular symbiotic relationship with AI and the data centers if we want the outcome that I believe that most people on our planet want, which is the utopia of, if I want to work, I can. If I don't want to work, I'm going to still eat. I'm going to eat good food, not garbage. I'm going to have a decent place to stay, reasonable entertainment, and life.
Yeah. I love it. Well, it's completely possible. My son used to mine Ethereum in the closet when we lived up in the mountains. And I'm like, just leave the door.
Story I've ever heard of a young man.
I'm like, just leave the door open. You're heating the house. But it was so hot in there. But it can work, I mean, I've been in data centers too, and the cooling is a big deal, but that means you can warm people's homes. Like, let's distribute this. It would make a lot more sense. So
yeah, you can heat homes. You could remove the chlorine from water reserves by preheating it before you send it out so we could remove chemicals from the humanity. There's a ton of things that you could do with the heat reclamation from data centers. A big part of what I do is, if we're going to build data centers, I think we need to do it ethically. So we've been working on a lot of liquid immersion data center technology. I've got about 100 kilowatts running today in that foot space. And to give you an idea, 100 kilowatts of AI running in liquid immersion takes about 20 square feet of space. And the same 200 kilowatts used 4,000 square feet of space 10 years ago. And the coolest thing about liquid immersion is that there's no freon, there's no chemical. You just put fans outside and you run oil outside. You can keep it at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's okay. So as long as you don't get your temperature outside over 100, then you're good. And no air conditioning. And this is what I think the world needs to be pushing for. And I'm going to tell you a phrase for data centers that the world needs to know. It's called PUE, power unit efficiency. For every watt that's required for the computer to run, you need a watt. How many watts does it take to support that with air conditioning, lights, and all those other things? With liquid immersion, it's 1.06. So for every watt of power, you use 0.06 watts of power to cool it. The direct-to-chip is like a 1.2. So you use 20 cents for every watt to cool, or 20 watts, 0.2 watts for every watt to cool it. And that's an important metric for us to push towards. And I believe that if we can reclaim the heat, we can get a negative PUE.
Yeah.
So we're using compute. We're taking the heat from the compute, and instead of spending money and resources and chemicals in our environment to cool it, we can use the heat from good stuff and not have any of that chemical stuff, and it costs us less money too. But oil's nasty to work in.
Yeah, robots won't care. Yeah, for sure.
They'll enjoy the oil.
Well, Ken, I could talk to you forever because I feel like we have so many interests that are similar. I would love to have you back sometime, but for now, where can people find you online? Where can they find your book? Tell us that again. Where can they find your hosting company? More information about you. I want to talk to you about your comedy stuff, but That'll be next time.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a quick list of rundowns. KenCox.com is the easiest place to find me. From there, you can go out on all the other branches. My comedy persona is CoxOut, CoxOut.com. And I write about the journey of comedy. I probably post 2 to 5 times a week about going out and doing mics and doing all this fun stuff. It's trying to show under the hood as much as possible. Yeah. So those 2 sites will get you everywhere else in my ecosystem.
Okay. Great. I will definitely be checking those out. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Kathy.